A very good afternoon, and thanks for clicking on to Vogan's European Outlook. Tuesday, the 15th of February, fairly rattling through winter's final month, aren't we? And I thought I would show you this tweet that I put out this morning, which looks at the stratosphere and the difference between this last year and this year. Now, this chart, rightly pointed out by Shryan Bruin, is not a particularly accurate chart, if you will, but I think the overall concept is pretty good in terms of what took place within the stratosphere last year versus what we've had so far this year. Now, what I'm looking at here and what I'm showing you is the GFS ensemble interpretation of what was expected to happen as of the 26th of December 2020. And what actually did take place was essentially this here, where we had a significant warming, a sudden stratospheric warming that crossed over top of the pole from Asia over top of the pole, and it split the polar vortex in two pieces. One piece went into North America, the other piece went into Europe. And essentially, what happened was we had record breaking cold and snowfall in the United States. We also had the coldest temperatures in the UK since December 1995, and it also was incidentally the coldest February temperature in the UK since 1955. So pretty dramatic stuff indeed here. And of course, we had a weak vortex at many points in the year. By this stage, by the way, during the middle portion of February, the vortex actually had strengthened quite significantly. But before that took place, we had this type of setup: sudden stratospheric warming, massive warming at the stratosphere, worked its way down through the troposphere, and we had the consequential Arctic outbreak both in North America and in Europe here. And of course, we unfortunately have to look at this at the moment. We've got the complete polar opposite, and literally a polar opposite. We've got a very strong polar vortex at 10 HPA. It's also coupled with the troposphere, driving very powerful zonal westerlies, and of course, with other dynamics in place, we're getting a very stormy spell this week that will likely continue into next week, and we'll look at that in just a second here. So, complete opposite turnaround from the sudden stratospheric warming that took place in January last year versus the record or near record strong polar vortex that we've got at the moment. And we're seeing not only storminess but also very warm weather indeed. We could actually see temperatures as high as 17 degrees in the southeast of England during the course of tomorrow. But anyway, by the way, I want to also show you, this is the opening. This is the opening 13 days of December last year, and you can just see exactly how warm it wasn't last year for the first 13 days. I was going to say the exact opposite of what I was meant to say. Very, very cold opening 13 days of the month. I believe it was the coldest opening 10 days to February, one of the coldest at least in the last 50 years, which is pretty remarkable. This is where we're at the moment. We're seeing potentially, based on what we've got so far and potentially what we've got the rest of the month, we could see one of the warmest Februaries on record, not just for the UK, but indeed for Europe as well. Because if you look at the GFS ensemble, upcoming 5-day period, we've got essentially a very warm Europe indeed, with the exceptions, if you notice, of Scotland here, because we're going to see colder temperatures. We're also going to see snowfall over the next several days as well. We've got also some chilly air, if you notice here, in the parts of Norway and Sweden as well. But on the whole, it's very, very warm indeed. In the 6 to 10 day, very little in the way of change. We're still warm across the continent, with the exceptions of Scotland and parts of Scandinavia. And even out to the 11 to 15 day, you can see here that we've got the warmth continuing. So all that combined with what we've seen so far during the first 15 days of the month, it looks as if it's going to maintain a very, very warm pattern indeed. So where are we at then? Of course, we've got the storm Dudley, which affects the UK later on tomorrow. We've also got storm Eunice that affects the UK on Friday. Now I'm going to try and kind of break down the meteorology behind it here. And I'm doing a lot of thinking on my drive between Wisbech and Cambridgeshire and the central belt of Scotland through the course of today. When you're on the road, you have a lot of time to kind of sit and think about things, and can trying to rack my brains, from about 3 o'clock this morning onwards in terms of what I'm going to talk about today in the video, trying to make it a little bit different to the previous couple of videos. You get the overall idea what's taking place within the atmosphere from stratosphere right down to the surface, the driving mechanisms behind the stormy weather. You've already been explained that. Want to look in more detail at the dynamics in place that is going to drive the next few days of weather here. This is looking at the GFS, the latest run over the Atlantic here. You want to draw your first attention here, of course, is the UK, Ireland. This is North America, the open Atlantic, of course. And you can see here the frontal system pushing through, the latest one, hanging back somewhat over the southeast of the British Isles through late this afternoon, if you notice here. But we've got another system here coming in tonight. So even before we have Dudley, we've got another system coming in that will bring wind, rain, and hill snow to the northern half of the British Isles in particular. So you can see here, as of midnight tonight, we've got an area of low pressure at 979 millibars that kind of pushes through fairly rapidly. If you notice here, then we've got the system that becomes Storm Dudley that moves in during the middle and second half of tomorrow. And you can see here that the system deepens quite significantly. It has an initial area of very heavy, persistent, gusty shower activity, a shield of moisture, so heavy, persistent rain for a time. Then it kind of becomes a little bit more fragmented, and then we get the core of the strongest winds, southern flank of the system, so where the centre goes in, 50 miles or so to the south of that centre, you've got the strongest winds within that circulation here. So we're going to have very, very gusty winds in excess of 60 to 70 miles an hour quite widely. Central belt, southern uplands, through the north of England as well. That is going to be where the core of strongest winds will be. Now, we are going to see within that 60 to 70 mile an hour wind field, so to speak, we are going to see gusts 75, even 80 miles an hour. And on exposed coastal areas and high ground, we could see wind gusts in excess of 90 miles per hour. So, of course, very significant indeed. However, that being said, it is February, it's winter, and it's in Scotland, the north of England. Climatologically speaking, it's a hard word to say that, this is not overly unusual. Named storm, going to have power outages, it's going to cause some damage, it's going to cause disruption to the rail network, the road network, possible influence on flights, for example, in and out of Glasgow and Edinburgh, Prestwick, maybe even Manchester, down as far as Birmingham. There is going to be issues with the wind, but all said and done, this is nothing particularly unusual. You would expect to see this given the overall pattern that we've got in place at the moment here. What I will say is this system doesn't hang around. It's attached to a very strong jet stream aloft, of course. We'll have a look at the jet stream in a second. But it whips on out, and then it's all eyes on Eunice here. Now, by the time later tomorrow comes, in Scotland and the north of England, Northern Ireland, by the way, I apologise, I've left you out, is right in the heart of Dudley. At that moment in time, that's when Eunice is likely to develop here, and it's some of the aspects around it is kind of catching my attention here. Because if you notice here, if we skip back to just before just before we've got the influence of Dudley. Now this is Dudley here, well to the west of the UK and Ireland, by the way, even at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. You notice here we've got a trailing frontal system that almost extends from Dudley all the way down into the tropics here, right into the Caribbean, if you will. See this area of precipitation seen by the model, this little kink in the in the isobars. That is what will become Eunice. So this here is the source region in which Eunice is born. And as I play through the next couple of frames here, you see an area of low pressure developing here. And of course, you've got the tail of convection extending all the way back towards Cuba, even Mexico, around this area of high pressure just off the eastern seaboard of the United States. Now, what is going to happen is this is going to allow some winds to blow out of the tropics. So moist winds, warm winds is going to feed this system all the while. Now, bear in mind how far south it is. It's basically in line with what Washington D.C. and Lisbon, Portugal. So it's pretty far south. What we're seeing is we're seeing cold air extend all the way down towards forming Eunice. Now, as I play through the loop, what's going to happen is Eunice is going to develop. It's going to be entraining warm, moist air from the Caribbean. It's going to also be feeding off cold air coming in from the northwest. Now, bear in mind as well, you've also got jet stream winds coming out of the northwest to the west-northwest of the system. We've also got jet stream winds coming out of the southwest as well. So we're seeing the two sources of air getting pulled inwards, drawn in by developing storm Eunice here. As we continue to play through the period here, cold air is actually running ahead of the system itself, and therefore it's adding fuel to the development process of the system here. And what's going to happen is that storm Eunice sees that collision of air masses. It's getting fed, it's getting vented by the jet stream aloft, and as we play through the loop, you see the rapid deepening process of storm Eunice here. Now, what's going to happen is it looks as if it's going to come through somewhere between Cork and say around the kind of Liverpool area. That looks as if where the centre is going to try to come through. Now, some of the models have that centre further south, some of the models have it slightly further north, but basically what we're talking about here is to the south of the centre, like we're seeing with Dudley. That is where the core of strongest winds are going to be. Now, the Met Office at the moment have only issued a yellow warning for wind here. Wouldn't surprise me if they up it. But the dynamics in place is more exceptional and more interesting. And climatologically speaking, this system is more of an impact than Dudley will be, because parts of England and Wales are not as used to having 60, 70, 80 mile per hour winds, even inland, with gusts in excess of possibly 90 along the coastline here. It's harder to get this strength of storm slightly further south. You expect it more Western Isles, Northern Isles, north of Scotland here. On the north flank, if you notice here, the purple's indicating heavy rainfall, or should I say heavy snowfall. I apologise. And that is going to be interesting to see as we go forward here. I'm running out of time, so I better hurry up here. That system scoots on out. We've got the next system coming through here as well. But you notice here by the jet stream winds here, what takes place is we've got Storm Dudley rides the jet stream into the British Isles, and you notice here the kink in the jet here. The Storm Eunice is forming on the south side of that. And what we may find as we play through the loop, you might actually find the Storm Eunice crosses from the south side to the north side of the jet stream, and that adds and increases instability and, of course, the collapse of air within the centre of the circulation here. So lots going on here. A very exciting week of weather to come. Milder, like I say, coming out in tomorrow with Storm Dudley. Then basically Eunice rides the boundary between super warm, super cool, and it eventually goes into the UK. That's it for today. Hope you have a great day. Back in the next